Significant for Nvidia, significant for the broader chip ecosystem, and significant for the AI giants in China. You just need to put this in the context of the last few years of continually tightening restrictions when it comes to export controls, both under the Biden administration and under the Trump administration. And the tightening of those export restrictions has not seen any let up at all between both administrations until now. And now you have a U-turn on an export restriction that was implemented in April, cutting off the supply of these H20 AI accelerators, chips that Nvidia had specifically designed for the Chinese market to make them compliant to previous export controls. Those chips were banned in April. Essentially, you had to go to the US government to get a permit. You weren't going to get that permit. Now, though, there's been a reversal, according to Nvidia, putting out a blog post. We haven't heard this directly from the US government, but Nvidia have put out a blog post saying they will, in short order, be able to resupply these H20 chips into the Chinese market, where, by the way, the CEO, Jensen Huang, currently is for a supply chain conference.
Tom, do we have any sense as to why the Trump administration appears to have changed its mind on these rules?
We have yet to hear directly from the Trump administration, but this is within the context of a thawing, at least around the edges, in terms of this trade war between the US and China. You had that meeting of US and Chinese officials in London after previous meetings in Geneva to focus specifically on export controls. For the US side, it was about getting hold of rare earth minerals and magnets that are essential in everything from cars to weapons systems. And for China, it was a focus on export restrictions on things like engine parts for aircraft, but also on semiconductor software, kit, and the hardware itself. And on both those sides, we've seen both China and the US walking back on some of those restrictions. So I think it should be seen within that context of the broader dynamics of this US-China relationship, which again, on some of these areas is now starting to ease, starting to thaw. And it follows a meeting by Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia, in the White House with President Trump last week. Now he's in China, so the timing is interesting. He went on state TV, CCTV, state TV, to make this announcement as well into that Chinese market, saying you will now be able to get access to the chips. Again, really good news if you're Alibaba or you're DeepSeek, and for the broader ecosystem as well. So we'll be watching, of course, the movements around some of the hardware suppliers, the ASMLs over in the Netherlands, and the ASMs and other chip suppliers in Europe to see if there's an uplift on the back of this news. It does seem to be very significant on a much broader basis.
OK, so if it's significant sort of across the sector, around the world, does it open the door for other chip companies then to get similar export approvals?
I think that's what's going to be watched now. I mean, the Netherlands and the US have worked increasingly closely to restrict the sales of, for example, these extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, these incredibly sophisticated machines about the size of a double-decker bus that are used in the production, the physical production of chips. Those have been restricted, the most high-end ones, into the Chinese market. Are there potentially some easing around that part of the market? In terms of the top line, that would be a massive surprise and seems very unlikely. But there may be other parts of this semiconductor ecosystem where possibly the Trump administration is prepared to ease back. Again, it would be a surprise in terms of the broader dynamics of where this relationship is going over a longer historical context. The concern, of course, in Washington, and particularly amongst the Defense Department and the Pentagon, is that these chips and this hardware and software ends up with the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese military, and will help them accelerate in terms of innovations on that front. Jensen Huang has made the case that he thinks it's very unlikely that the PLA, that the Chinese military, will want to be reliant on those components because they know that the US can switch them off at any point. That's part of his argument. Another part of his argument is that if you're not in the market in China, then you're losing out to innovation and competition from the likes of Huawei, the smartphone maker that has proven very adept at building out its own semiconductor supply chain. It's still not matching the capabilities of Nvidia, but it's surprised many within the tech ecosystem in terms of just how innovative Huawei is able to be with its own AI chips.